Sometimes wrestlers go crazy. Now, I actually understand this a little bit because I've done a couple of street fights. And yeah, when you're in it, you just want to keep pushing it. That's really, really weird. Even then, though, I'm talking about an extra fall through a table or maybe a slightly risque chair shot. Whereas some individuals take this idea and, man, they go way too far with it. So brace yourself and be warned of some graphic injury, maybe, depending on what we can get away with here on YouTube. Here's 10 times wrestlers got really messed up and pretend Ian and Axel Rotten slice each other up. If you were around at the time, you would have seen the pictures of this probably before you even watched the match, because my word, it was born into wrestling lore. Nobody could believe it. It takes about 5 seconds before it gets nasty because glass is introduced, and then Ian and Axel just take turns slicing each other up. And everything else is just them plodding around as blood does pour from their head. But if gore is your thing, well, you don't even need me to tell you to watch it because you've already seen it. There is so much of the red stuff to it will turn your stomach if you are a big wuss like me. And the way they use the glass in this, like, I guess you could call it creative, you can also call it disgusting. I mean, it's unreal in many ways, although it was advertised as such, so you can't be too surprised. But I'll be honest with you, I only ever watched like half of this when I realized, no, this is not the kind of wrestling I want to see, and I have to turn it off. But look, respect to you if it is your style, but oh my gosh. Number 9, Mick Foley loses an ear. You will have heard about this one too, because it is an absolutely famous thing in wrestling, especially because when Mick Foley wrote his first book, he got right into it. You couldn't not be fascinated by it either, because it opened up a very important question. Why are pro wrestlers losing ears? Exactly. Now, I suppose there's no surprise that it would happen to someone like Foley, who just had a crazy tolerance for pain. When you also learn that it happened overseas and came out of nowhere, it gets quite scary. But as he fought Vader in Germany, he did the spot he used to do when somebody threw him out the ring, and he would ensure his head got caught in the ropes. However, I suppose maybe he hadn't checked things beforehand, and these ropes were way too tight, so when he had to wiggle jiggle his way out of there, that's right, the top of his ear pinged off and fell on the floor. Why do you really have to read this tale in Foley's own words, especially the point of people trying to get this thing and put it on ice so it can be reattached? But again, go and look at a picture of Michael today. He definitely does not have that ear. So it didn't work. Once again, wrestling is crazy. Number 8, Sabu rips his bicep apart. Some people watch Sabu today and go, man, I don't get it. I think that was the point. Because his work was never meant to be compared against the best of the best, and instead was meant to be enjoyed in the moment. I mean, this was a guy who sometimes would intentionally screw up. So you'd sit there and go, did he do that on purpose? Or was it an accident? In many ways, he was the master of getting you to suspend your disbelief. It just meant that he was wild and impulsive, though, and often would make things up the fly. Also, he had no barrier to anything. So if you had said, hey man, do you want to, I don't know, be shot out of a cannon into a concrete wall? He would have weighed it up and done the maths and gone, yeah, I think that will get a pop. Either way, at the pay-per-view ECW Born to be Wired, he did not mean to rip his bicep in the way that he did. This got really gnarly. But after going for and totally missing his Air Sabu move, he looked at his arm that had just been totally sliced in about 72 different places, and he was lucky he didn't do the same things to their legs. They were in a horrible position. You could tell that he was worried, as was manager Bill Alfonso, because he runs in there with a bunch of tape and just starts wrapping this thing up, because there is so much damn blood, somebody's got to put a stop to the thing. If you need more evidence that this was awful as well, it took 100 stitches to sort out 100. So I suppose this is why people did call him a maniac, because he was a maniac. If you're a wrestler, please never do this. Number 7, Jun Casai bumps face first. So if I wanted to, I could have filled this entire list with stuff that Jun Casai had done, because I swear this guy didn't care. Clearly somebody who enjoyed the pain, Jun was someone that would just push the barrier, I suppose because he knew that it would get talked about. It wasn't wrong, because we're still chatting about it today, but once again, in terms of my tum-tum, it is way too much. All of these risks did make him a legend of the deathmatch circuit, though, but I don't think anybody was prepared for something he did one day in CZW. Because he saw a board that was covered in blades and decided, well, I know what will get a reaction. Why don't I take my face and throw it into the thing? So he did. I mean, he really was lucky not to die, and the amount of blood made it look like he had face paint on. But he is grinning ear to ear like a Cheshire cat. I actually think he enjoyed it. So graphic that I don't think YouTube will allow us to put anything up here, and if you try and find it on the internet, be warned. Once again, this is way too grotesque for me, and I do not understand how he survived it. Number 6, Masashi Diao destroys his back. Much like anything in wrestling, weapons have range. I mean, look at the table. Even though fans see it all the time, they totally love it, and you can turn it into something quite devastating. I mean, you can climb up a ladder and then fall through a table. so it's times 6. Steel chairs and kendo sticks fit into this category too. And then you have something like the cinder block. I don't think many fans buy into that one, because if you actually did use a cinder block on someone, well, they would be dead. The thing is, though, at least that one is silly, and I like silly. When it comes to the Kader, I don't understand what he was thinking, because at a GCW show, he too saw a board with a bunch of knives in it, and he just dove into the thing. He went in back first too, and surprise, surprise, all of these sharp points just totally ripped it to shreds, to the point he wasn't able to continue, and this whole thing was stopped. I mean, the holes in his back are absolutely horrific to see, and just imagine what else came along with this. You just know there's going to be other complications. Go and look at the other people's faces who are witnessing this too. They don't think it's cool at all. Once again, I've got that horrible feeling in my legs. Speaking of legs, number 5, Sid goes and snaps his. So sadly, this one is quite well known because it was seen on very popular television. I mean, hell, it was a pay-per-view. Sid was the name of that event too, and ever since it has been doing the rounds on YouTube. I suppose it's one of the earliest things that did go crazy on the internet when it came to wrestling and injuries. There is a horrible story to this as well, because Sid Justice has said time and time again WCW made him go to the top rope, even though he was like, I've had an amazing career and I've never gone to the top rope. Anyway, he was convinced to do it, didn't really know what he wanted to do, and when he fell on his leg, I'm just going to be honest with you, it snaps in two. And if you do decide to watch it, you will see his ankle just flailing there. Once again, it's just horrible. Everybody freaked out about this as well. Because Nitro was desperate for ratings, the following evening, they showed it over and over again. And maybe I thought that was okay as a kid, but as an adult man, I think it's absolutely irresponsible. Sid pointed the finger of blame at John Laurinaitis too and said it was him that made him do it. And he needed so many surgeries to fix this that it essentially ended his career. He also essentially had to teach himself to walk again. So once more, if you ever do have a risk in mind, just consider whether it's worth it. And before Brock Lesnar puts a hole in Randy Orton's head. A word to the wise, if a former USC fighter says to you, don't worry, I can bust you open, but do it in a safe way, go, no you can't, you buffoon, and walk away. Now, I'm sure Randy Orton knew this already, but it was on a situation where he was kind of screwed, because that's SummerSlam 2016. The ending to his match with Brock Lesnar was that Brock was going to take his elbow and bust the Viper open for real. Now, WWE did this because they thought it was less barbaric than blading. That's always been my big question. Like, taking a razor blade and doing that certainly is controversial, but I would much rather do that than have somebody else go, let me get inside of your brains. Like a zombie. You're also far more likely to get a concussion this way, and you can see it was bad because the blood coming out of Randy's head was so thick. And when Chris Jericho saw this backstage, he thought that Lesnar had gone into business for himself, and he was going to run out there before Vince McMahon stopped it. As all this worked people either, it just put individuals off. I'm glad we've never done this again, because yeah, just to repeat myself, we should never do it again. Number 3, The Rock murders Mankind's head. Another famous incident from the 1999 Royal Rumble. It's also another situation when you could go, by accident, a wrestler went into business by themselves. Because The Rock and Mankind had definitely agreed that Mick Foley should be hit with a number of unprotected headshots, given that it was an I Quit match. And then when Dwayne Johnson got the microphone and put it to his mouth and screwed over Mick Foley by playing a recording of him saying I quit, we would have all the sympathy in the world. And it kind of worked, but they just went way too far. The absolute worst part of this is that it was filmed for the Beyond the Mat documentary, meaning Mick Foley's family was in the crowd, and they have to leave during this, because yeah, they weren't sure what was real and what wasn't anymore. They were worried about their dad/husband. No one remembers all the other little bits from this though, which did make it such a classic, because everyone just says, well, we probably could have got away with 6, but why on earth did we get into double figures? Even Mick Foley has come out and said for a long while The Rock never apologized to him, and that really bothered him, as it would. But he's just not nice watching another man get totally murked in this way, especially in 2024. The concussion protocol is real. Number 2, Joey Mercury shatters his face. Some of the worst things that we have covered today have come from a choice that the wrestler has made. That is not the case here with Joey Mercury. We go back to Armageddon 2006 for this one, and a ladder match, because Team Eminem were taking on Team Hardy Boys. Now, a ladder was set up in the corner too that kind of had a seesaw effect going on to it. And the idea is that Jeff Hardy would jump onto one side, and the other side would smash Joey Mercury and John Morrison right in the face, and it would look pretty cool. Now, it did look pretty cool, but for one reason or another, it actually hit Joey for real, and I think I mean this literally, his nose and his face just exploded. The swelling was so instant, he looked like a different person within about 5 minutes, and everybody here knew it was a big deal, and he was rushed to hospital almost instantly. It also took ages for Mercury to recover from this, because just waiting for the swelling to go down alone Well, it took months. So it just goes to show that how even the simplest of stunts can end in the worst possible way, which is why I'm going to be your dad again. We all just need to be super duper careful. Number 1, John Moxley and Eddie Kingston get creative. So with that in mind, let us end on a work spot, and maybe something that can inspire other wrestlers to go, oh man, we don't need to do it for real. We just need to get the emotion. They shouldn't have done that. It was a full year 2020 though, when John Moxley and Eddie Kingston did engage in that awesome feud that had this big payoff match, with Eddie saying, man, I ain't gonna lose here. I even swear on my mother's life. That's deep. He did eventually, because Moxley was actually going to kill him, but what I want to focus on is something that happened before this, and after Moxley had decided to totally destroy Eddie Kingston's back. Within the story. Since the ringside doctor was freaking out because it did look so bad, we also introduced some rubbing alcohol into the mix, and we poured it over these wounds. And the reason it connected so well with the audience is because we've all been there. We've got a boo-boo, we've put alcohol on it, and what do? We go, ah, that hurt. So instantly we knew what was going down. Now, it wasn't real. I'm sure we did add some smell to this to convince the fans, but the way that everybody sold this, it made your brain go, well, it's clearly an act. But what if it's not? And he also acted like he totally lost the plot here, which was another way for you to buy in. I understand this is quite the weird way to end this list, but I always thought this was so well done. Just something else that everybody involved with wrestling could probably learn from. Also, the story was a nice way to wrap things up. And of course, you can go in those comments below and tell me other things that are totally messed up with wrestling. But remember, you don't know who will be looking at those. Try and keep it as family friendly as you can. Also, like the video, share the video and subscribe, and click the other list on the screen right now, which is me telling you about more wrestling trivia. Otherwise, thank you very much, my friends. I'll see you soon.